right, I'm back on my favorite stage with two very interesting women representing very interesting ways of looking at cloud computing. Now, for those of us who have no idea what cloud computing has to do with the green energy transition, can you walk us through it, Albane?
Well, yeah. Cloud for computing, we have to understand it's about, at the beginning, some infrastructure, big infrastructure with cooling systems for servers. Because cloud computing is giving opportunity to all the tech world to have access to servers for computing or for storing some data. And so cloud computing has a big impact on the environment because there is this servers, this cooling, this infrastructure that we have to power. And this is the key of the next generation for tech.
Thank you for defining that, because I remember hearing about cloud computing many years ago and naively thinking like, so what, the data is somewhere but it's accessible? So hopefully that cleared it up for the people who are like me who didn't know exactly what it was. Michelle, you are originally an English major.
Right.
How did you get into this tech arena?
Well, so before starting Supercritical, I started a previous business called Songkick, which is a live music ticketing and discovery app. I raised several rounds of funding, exited it, but that really made me fall in love with starting a company and using that to solve a problem that's useful for other people. And after I left the business, I kind of woke up to the urgency of climate change. I had a child in 2018, and a month after he was born, the IPCC report, the UN body of scientists, came out saying the world needs to get to net zero emissions by 2050. And I was able to look at him and think, oh my God, in 2050 you're going to be 30-something years old. Like, this is really terrifying now. I need to do whatever I can to kind of help with this. So I spent the last couple of years as a venture partner at a seed stage VC in London, looking at climate change, just really educating myself. And it was really when the founder of the fund tasked me with getting them to net zero. He was like, we need to get to net zero. This is the right thing to do. LPs are asking us. And I found that process of figuring it out incredibly frustrating. I was like, this is so confusing. No one's giving me an easy guide to know what to do. And I'm a fairly engaged, smart person. If it's this hard to do, people aren't going to act. And from building a consumer app that millions of people use monthly, I just know making it simple is what helps people change their behavior. So I started Supercritical to do just that. We help businesses get to net zero. We measure carbon emissions with a piece of software upstream, in your value chain where the cloud computing comes in, and downstream in your usage of your product. And then we help them buy carbon removal offsets.
You educated me about something that I wanted to put to the audience and just see a show of hands. How serious do you think, or how large a problem do you think carbon emissions is in the in cloud computing and the technology sector? Can we raise a hands? Very serious, or like not so much? Very serious? Okay, so you all are aware, actually. You want to share with us some of the stats you have? I was not aware. That was news to me. I always looked at transportation or other, but...
Yeah. So we primarily work with tech companies, and that's really because I learned that the tech sector as a whole, both cloud as well as hardware, has more emissions than that of aviation. So that's a very little known fact. I think people don't really talk about it, and that's why I think greening the cloud is such an important thing to do, because it's a huge piece of the puzzle.
Now, once again, I'm going to go back to basics for myself and then somebody else who, I represent, who's not as brave maybe to say that I don't know all about it. But why are we even talking about cloud computing? Like, why was this transition to set up this kind of infrastructure? What was the reason behind it?
Well, this transition is necessary. What I'm used to say that cloud computing is really raw material of the cloud. So if you consider tech, you have to consider what is happening in cloud computing. And what is happening in cloud computing is understanding what is happening in data centers. And this is something we are really sensible about. We want to make sure that people understand there is an opportunity to improve the data center impacts, and there is innovation that enables us to improve this impact. And this is where people choosing cloud computing, because everyone here is working in cloud computing, should be aware and should be make sure that they know what is the impact and that they have the right to choose, they have the right to change.
Yeah, and that's such an important point, because what we do is we give a company a report of their carbon emissions, and a big chunk of it comes from cloud computing. And I don't know if you guys saw Brad Smith's talk about getting to net zero. We have to estimate the cloud computing carbon emissions because most of the providers don't give it to you. They're not transparent with it. Some of them, like GCP, just released a dashboard that provides more transparent emissions. But like what you guys are doing is really showing hour by hour, week by week, the number of carbon emissions that come from your compute. And that is, it's better to get the real data, the transparent data, than have to estimate, which is what we do.
Yeah, we really call on this and on this capacity that we would have a standard really measure, worldwide measure, that enables everyone to know and understand what cloud computing is really consuming. It's like food label, you have to know exactly why you choose something and how it goes. And having a right standard will make sure that we are all accountable and that we are all improving on the right way.
Got it. Now, I remember we were talking backstage, and I just said that I've understood that setting up a cloud computing infrastructure is not necessarily inexpensive to begin with, Albane. So why are we doing it?
No, it's not. It's like, there is two types of innovation. There is this disruptive innovation, really making things different. This is what we did in our DC5, which is Europe's most sustainable data center. And this is innovation that costs. This innovation costs because we were really at the forefront of technology, and we are now improving for 40% our power consumption. So this is huge. So yes, there are big costs, and sometimes clients have to assume a part of this cost. But at the same time, there's a lot to do, which is not maybe less disruptive, but day-to-day innovation that really helps to improve also the environmental impact. And day-to-day innovation can be on hardware. We are working, and we achieved that our hardware is used 2 times more than the average on the markets, because we are working every day with all teams to improve this impact.
Got it. All right, so Michelle, I'm a company, I have an infrastructure, and I want to decarbonize it. I want to know now what you can do for me. I have no idea what's going on, but I want to be part of the solution.
Yeah, that's a great question. It really starts with doing the carbon accounting exercise and measuring upstream and downstream where your emissions are coming from. We work with so many companies who want to do the right thing. They might do some ad hoc, they have a sustainability group in the company, they recycle, they don't use plastic water bottles, but until they do that carbon audit, they don't know their real climate impact. And I think that goes back to Albane's point about the transparency of the data and knowing where your emissions come from. Like, you can't change and manage what you can't measure, right? Like, that's a cliche, really. So once you have that carbon audit, you then know, okay, here are my biggest sources of emissions. Maybe it's your employee work from home emissions. Maybe it's your cloud computing. Maybe it's the food you serve in the office if you're Friday hamburgers, right? And until you've kind of measured it, you can't really know. But once we've done that, we then give you a guideline to what your pathway to net zero will be, reduction recommendations based on where your emissions come from. And then the last half is really helping you access carbon removal. So the world cannot get to net zero without carbon removal. In the offsetting space, there are conventional offsets that essentially pay other people to stop emitting. And in that world, your company emits a ton, you pay someone to not emit a ton, your ton is still out there warming the planet. That does not get you or the world to net zero. Whereas there are these early technologies that literally filter carbon from the atmosphere and bury them underground. Like, the best example is direct air capture. And these technologies are very early, but we need them to start removing billions of tons a year in the next few decades. And that's really what we want to do, is help companies access these removal technologies, be early adopters of the technology so we can get it to scale, because that's really what the planet needs.
Albane, how do you convince companies to take this, that this approach is good for business, given that decarbonizing tech infrastructure has an added cost on top of what we've already talked about, that that is cloud computing?
Well, I think we have to understand, all of us have to understand, that the key thing is clients and talents. We have all this situation on all companies. We know that millennials, 90% of them won't accept to work for a company which is not having a good environmental impact. So make it clear, maybe it's a cost at the beginning, a little cost. But anyway, if you want to have sustainability on the long run, if you want to make sure that your company is making business sense, that you are developing the right way, you will have to go through this path.
Yeah.
And so anyway, it's not even a question. You should only find the way to do it and find the best way to do it and find the figures that assure you you are on the right path. But making it is almost an obligation today to have talents and clients, I think.
I mean, most of the companies I work with do it because it's the right thing to do, but as Albane said, it's a huge kind of talent reason. Like lots of staff are asking their employers what they're doing about it. But just at COP, the UK Treasury announced that they're going to force companies above a certain size to report on their net zero plan. So it's really regulations happening because more than 70% of the world's GDP has made a net zero target. That's going to trickle down into business, and so get ahead of it. Don't be too late, and be on the back foot around it.
So the slogan is pay now or pay more later in terms of reputation, in terms of money, in terms of all kinds of issues. I'll ask you this, Michelle. You were talking about helping companies with carbon removal schemes. One of the schemes is carbon capture and storage. I think it's I would say still a bit controversial in the sense that it's still a bit expensive. Some critics say it's expensive. Does it really work? Like, why do you bet on that technology?
Yeah, it's not a matter of betting on the technology. The fact is we've left carbon reduction too late to not start removing as well. To stay below 1.5 degrees of warming, we have to remove billions of tons. So if this is a technology we know we have to have, how do we make it successful? How do we make it scale? How do we make it cheaper? So I think that the controversy argument is it's too late for that now. Maybe 20, 30 years ago, we could have not done with it, but we have to have it now. So we have no choice. And so that's why I've chosen to double down on carbon removal.
Yeah, and you think essentially that we can also get to a place where it's not that expensive if we get up to
I mean, all
scale.
the removal method suppliers we work with have a cost curve estimate where they can get it down rapidly in the next few years. So that is, and we've seen that before. We've seen that story before with renewables. It came down the cost curve much faster than people predicted it could do. So the same will happen with these technologies, and we work with customers who understand that because they are tech companies. They get scaling, they get being an early adopter, and that's kind of who we're working with right now.
Got it. Now, Albane, same thing here. I'm a company. I have this cloud infrastructure, and I want to get it right from the beginning. What can you help me with? What can Scaleway do for me?
Having the right from the beginning, then you should choose, and you should make sure that data is given to you. I was really surprised. I'm a buyer at the beginning, and so when I discovered the cloud computing, I was really surprised to see that clients are looking for efficiency, for innovation, and that's it. It's just like, as a human being, as a buyer, there is an earth situation. You can just not say, that's it. I'm a buyer. I would say, look at the costs. But also, we have to look at the environmental impact. And so what we have to do, and what can people do, CTOs can do, is really to find the data center which will be the most environmental friendly, the less power and water, because we didn't speak about this, but cooling can be done by power or water. So we have to take figures, take data, as Michelle said, and make sure where am I going to have my computing possibilities and what is the impact. And if you do this from the beginning, then you scale having this data, having this improved data centers. And also what we work a lot with our companies and inside our company is what we call lean coding. Lean coding is not just making code, it's not just considering that you put lines of codes and there is cloud computing, so anyway, there is some capacity. No, it's finding a code that will use less capacity of computing. This means use less power. You can do games around this if you want with the developers, I don't know. But anyway, you have to trust them and to train them to go to this type of
process.
Coding, sorry.
Yeah, exercise. Makes sense. Interesting. Like coding for lower emissions from the beginning.
But that should be embedded in every decision you make as a business. Where's your pension going to? Which flights are you taking? And if you don't keep that climate impact in mind, if you don't know what it is even, then you can't make the right decision.
Yeah. Let's get a little bit granular if we can also. What are some of the challenges? Like, you go into an existing company with an existing infrastructure, it can't be easy for them to turn on a dime and do some of these changes. Where do you find the spots of resistance? Is it changing human behavior? Is it actually the deploying of new technology? Albane?
I wish it's more about not being afraid to change. would be, I think, the most thing, because change of behavior, yes, we've talked about lean coding, and it's also having, I think, the good pragmatic way of buying and choosing a supplier. Again, I'm a buyer. I know I will never accept to have only one supplier. I want to have two. I want to make sure there's a possibility to change. I want to make sure that I have the choice and I can move with my supplier. You know, we always say that companies are just changing to meet their clients' requirements. And this is where we can act. And so I think the most important thing is for people to understand cloud, you can change your supplier. Cloud, you can do multi-cloud, and you have the right to choose. This is, I think, the main message that they have to understand.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the thing that inspires change the most is accountability. So we're partnered with a coalition of tech companies in the UK called Tech Zero, and these are some of the biggest unicorns like Wise, Starling, Babylon. They've all made a net zero commitment publicly, and as part of signing up, you make a public net zero commitment by a date, you report to the board annually your carbon emissions, and you have a carbon reduction plan. And I think that once you have a board level, exec level commitment to this, then you have to change, right? So it's scary for a lot of the companies we work with. Are like, can I do this? How do I do it? And it's like making that. It's just like with any project you have. You set the goal. You don't know how you're going to get there, but you set the goal, and then you have the accountability, the reporting to make sure you're on track for it.
Got it. Now, Albane, your company is an established company, been around for 2 decades. Yours is a startup. How is that? How's your experience been in the market? Is it easy raising capital? Are people excited and energized by the idea?
Yeah, I mean, why don't you go first? Okay, I'm more recent, right?
Yeah.
Well, I have the privilege of being a second-time founder, so my fundraising experience this time around was completely different, and I was really lucky to choose and select who I worked with, and also I know kind of the value of investors, so I was able to know like more critically what I need from my investors. The other thing I did this time around, which I'm personally really proud of, is half of my angels are women, and I made that a goal for myself, and I took longer to fundraise, but it was something that was really important to me. But I think broadly, like everyone's waking up to the challenge of climate. Investors now can see the opportunity in investing in climate tech. Humanity needs these solutions, so there's going to be money to be made as everyone adopts the new technology. So there's a lot of interest and excitement around climate tech for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, for us, Scaleway is very different. We have 20 years, so it's a bit different. We're not absolutely not a startup, but it's, again, because we really think it makes business sense. Going to the climate, making sure we have the good environmental impact is actually the right way to do the business and to develop your company and to have even more return on investment, because you do it with a global view that helps you decide the right way and go further in the path that you have decided. So
yeah, because you are an established player, are there any ideal partnerships you're looking for? You know what I mean, commercial partnerships, or when you want to look at complementing technology or complementing resources or synergies, since we have all these people probably that represent different companies, is there anything like?
Yeah, our partnership will be that we have, we were talking yesterday with someone doing some podcasts, and all this software that is given to simplify the way to give access to the web and giving tools to all the people using the web. This is where we would like to have some partnerships, because we want these people to understand it's not just choosing the easiest path, but choosing the right one. And so with these people, their customers most of the time don't even know who are the cloud provider which is behind. And we want to work with them and to show there is a way for them and their clients to have a better impact, and not just considering the SaaS that they have in front of them.
Got it. Now, everyone has been talking about what's happening in the background, COP26. If you had a policy wish list, I'm going to ask both of you, but Michelle, if you had a policy wish list for what could support your efforts and support the green energy transition, what would it be?
Well, for me, I think there's 2 policies that we need. I think that what the British government has done around requiring businesses to have a net zero strategy and having clear definitions around what that means, that's enormous. There's so much greenwashing going around with where people are claiming net zero for something, this and that, but when you look into their report, it's not actually upstream and downstream entire scope 1, 2, and 3 emissions net zero. So that's one thing. Like, if the country's committed to net zero, then every actor in the country needs to also get to net zero. That's one thing. And I think the other one that I really care about is more regulation around what counts as a carbon offset. There's just so much crap out there. The more I looked into it.
I'm sorry, did you call it crap?
Yes, absolute crap. Yeah, even stuff that's verified by the certification bodies is just not doing anything. And there's been report after report calling this out. You know, the European Commission did a study of carbon offsets, and they found that 85% of them were not additional, they were not valid. And that's just, but it's being sold today because the market is a voluntary market. So I think more strict definitions around what counts as an offset, doubling down on carbon removal only rather than emissions avoidance is another piece of policy that's really needed.
It's interesting because it means that even for companies in good faith or individuals or countries in good faith who are accounting for their carbon emissions, we are not really clear on what that is since we don't have a uniform standard.
Yeah, that's absolutely right.
Yeah. Albane, what's your policy wish list?
My policy wish list will be this standard I was talking about, you know, exactly what you just said, that we make sure that everyone is judged on exactly the same standard and that we can choose and we can know exactly what is happening. So pushing everyone to be accountable, pushing everyone to be giving some visibility, which will be the first step and which is really important. We try on our side, but if everyone has this, as we just said before, everyone is judging differently and calculating differently, then you don't have any way of making sure you are taking the good decision. And the second one will be, of course, more work on the power production, because of course, on our side, we try to improve and we consume less power. But if we consume less power, but it's still about coal and about gas, then it's a fail for everyone. They have governments, and this is what COP is about. Governments have to understand that we make move, but we as tech and citizens want them to make a move and make sure that not because there is a gas crisis, then suddenly we just forget all the engagement that we have. We want wind, we want solar, we want something efficient that makes sure that behind the power we will consume anyway, because there is growth. It's good power and it's low carbon efficient.
Got it. Is there anyone you're watching in the market, either a company or a jurisdiction, like a country that has gotten it right, Michelle?
Yeah, I mean, I've been hugely inspired by Microsoft. I think they have the highest ambition kind of climate plan. Their transparency in reporting their emissions, where they come from, as well as what they've done around carbon removal purchases and making all of the data transparent has been hugely inspiring. And you know, they've committed to erase their historical lifetime emissions since founding in like 1970 something, and that's actually stood as an example to some of our customers, and they've decided to do that as well. And because they've founded in 2015 or a lot more recently, they're able to do that today. So I really look up to Microsoft and what they're doing around climate.
Okay. And is there a country also? I mean, you mentioned the UK, of course, that's gotten pretty far in these matters, but is there another jurisdiction or anything that you take inspiration from in terms of how far they've gotten? You know what? I'll let you think on that one.
This is a complex one.
I know.
Yeah. It's not because I'm French. I would say, even if it's nuclear, I like the fact that France has the low carbon power in Europe because they are working. So nuclear is maybe not the right solution, but anyway, they are really working on it. I was listening that Portugal has two-thirds of their power energy, which is only renewable energy. So countries are doing things. Not enough maybe, but Europe countries, we can see there is a difference. And to go on the same side as you, I think we always talk about cloud computing, always talk about the impact, but we have not to forget that I have this figure which is really impressive. We say that traffic has tripled, data center use has doubled, and since 2015, data centers consumption has been stable. When you know the growth that we had, this is huge already. Yeah. So this doesn't mean we have to stop there. There's a lot to do, but anyway, we can be proud of this. I'm not sure all the industries can say so.
Thank you for bringing up the math on that generally, because I don't know if it's people are widely aware that there are projections for our energy use and energy consumption, and that is just going up. And even to your point, bringing up nuclear, I know that's for some people it's a divisive issue, but when you make the calculation for where we're going to get that power, and if you want to decarbonize, then it is one of the options unless you come up with something else, because people will need that power. Need that power to go to work. They need the power to power industries. So this is a very interesting point. I'll say, you guys are here at the Web Summit, and I always ask this question because, you could be back working away doing, on your projects, but you're here. What is it that you're looking for, either to convey a message or maybe a resource or something that you're looking to take from here? Michelle?
I think it's to convey the message of the responsibility of tech companies, like everyone here works for a tech company, to act and to engage with this challenge. I mean, that's the reason I came here. And then it's also the first conference I've been to since lockdown, so it's just nice to see people in person and meet them face to face.
Nice. Albane?
I would have said exactly the same. We have, so I'm going to assume this. It's a shared responsibility that we have. And we're here to make sure that people knows it, people understands it, and that we can explain how we can share this together and improve together.
Okay, excellent. Well, I've learned a lot. So anyone who wants to talk to these ladies, where can we find you? If somebody wants to partner with you or they have an idea, Michelle?
Yeah, email contact@gosupercritical.com. Every email goes to myself and my co-founder. I read all of them, and yeah, get in touch.
Got it.
Yeah, same, email, contact, and we have a stand on hall 3. I don't remember the number, but anyway, we are here, so come, and we'll be pleased to tell you more about it.
Excellent. Supercritical and Scaleway, thank you for all for this discussion. I've learned a lot. Right?
Thank you.